Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. I am available to deliver keynote presentations and workshops for your company or for your conference. Reach out to me, davedelaney.speaks.com, or email me and we can talk. Now on with the show.
Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA.
A PB&J partner is somebody who offers a highly complementary service to the same client base. For me, my PB&J partners that I refer literally every day are my IP attorney, Sharon Turek from Legal and Creative, CPAs, graphic designers, marketing agencies, branding agencies, photographers, videographers, video editors. These are people who have a highly complementary service. And so as one place to start where you're looking to expand referrals in your business, you could ask your ideal clients, who are other service providers that you have that are your favorites that are offering complementary services? And if you have a strong relationship, you could ask them, are you comfortable just making an introduction? That first step could be where you simply just do learn more about them. You know, I heard you were amazing from our shared client. Tell me a little bit more about what you do. And that's the way you begin to build these relationships.
Nice.
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 Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice with Dave Delaney.
Hey, before we get started today, I'd like to ask you to please leave me a review if you're enjoying the show. Just go to friend.nicepodcast.co and you can leave a review and let me know how you're enjoying the show. Of course, your reviews matter because they help others discover the show. And they also are a nice way to say thanks and to let me know that you're enjoying things. And today's featured review is from Jason Falls, who wrote, "Love Dave's attitude and spirit. He's bringing more happiness to the world, and I love that he's doing it for businesses too." And Jason left 5 stars, which is really nice. Thanks, Jason. Welcome to the Nice Podcast, all about communication, collaboration, and becoming better leaders. I'm your host, Dave Delaney from Futureforth.com, where we help fast-growing technology companies retain talent and improve culture so you have happier, more connected teams. Today, I'm speaking with Pam Smith. I already messed up your name. Good Lord in the morning. Today, I'm speaking with Pam Slim, an award-winning author, speaker, and business coach who works with small business owners ready to scale their businesses and IP. She's the author of Escape from Cubicle Nation and Body of Work and the Widest Net, which just came out in November. Pam and her husband, Darryl, co-founded the Main Street Learning Lab in Mesa, Arizona, a lovely, lovely place that I visited. And they host scores of diverse community leaders there and regular small business programming as well, which is just such a cool thing. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I always like to start these things with, what is the nicest thing someone has done for you recently?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I'm going to go with, there's actually a lot, but I'm going to go with my neighbor downtown. As you said, we have a learning lab space right in the middle of Main Street downtown, Mesa. And my neighbor, a couple doors down, Chris, who runs a clothing store, just about every day sweeps in front of my office. So not only does he do it for himself, but he comes down a few doors and sweeps just to make sure that everything is nice and neat. And I just think that is one of the kindest things that anybody has ever done.
That is super cool. That is super sweet. What a nice, that's a super nice gesture to do that. And I love that. And I love your neck of the woods there, or neck of the desert, I guess. It's such a cool space. Tell us a little bit about it for those who are unfamiliar.
Yes. So Mesa is just about 20 minutes from the Phoenix airport, and we have a downtown area that is going through a lot of really exciting transformation. And so my husband and I opened up a space about 5 years ago, really with the intention of having a place where people can explore and dream. Having spent 10 years as a management consultant in Silicon Valley, it feels like almost a typical conference room where there's a whiteboard wall and lots of cool creative ideas flying around. We wanted to make that very accessible right in the middle of Main Street in ways that most Main Street business owners generally don't have access to. So we've been there for about 5 years and have engaged all kinds of community. We tend to focus on business owners of color. My husband is Navajo. And so we do a lot of work with Native entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, Latinx, Asian entrepreneurs. And so it's just a always interesting place with lots of action happening. I mean, of course, after the quarantine, we were all in our homes safely, but now we're just slowly starting to kick back up again.
Yeah. How is things going as far as that recovery? I'm sure, having an event space like that, which is just such a special place, but during the pandemic, I'm sure it must have not been the greatest time.
Well, it is, but what's really interesting about it, and I do share with great pride about the relationships that were built with ourselves, with so many amazing partners downtown. So everything from the city of Mesa to nonprofits like Rail, Retail Arts Innovation Livability, a nonprofit that's very active in the neighborhoods. We actually didn't lose any businesses during all the shutdown, which is kind of amazing. And we didn't hear the same thing in other places. And we think a lot of it, we meaning the collective, all the ecosystem partners, because we care. We knew who everybody was. We had a ways of connecting, and we really leveraged the kind of support that people got for what they actually needed. So the nonprofit partner Rail, they did a lot of standing more than 6 feet apart from the business owner, walking them through how to fill out a PPP loan or some of the recovery funds. And I really do feel great pride in the way that we've come together. And to me, it speaks to this deeper need of often when we talk about, having a community that's really connected that can help each other, you often know that you need it once you need it. And it's too late by that point if you haven't done that nurturing. So it's why I know you're very much this way as well. I'm a big fan of making slow connections every day through time so that you can celebrate together. And then when times get tough, you know who to call.
No, it's very true. I mean, that is really the essence of networking nicely, right? Like the whole idea of building great relationships over time, as you're saying, and then being there. I'm all about sort of the call it what you want, karma, but planting those seeds and just trying to help others, and then if you need help one day, hopefully they'll be there for you.
Yeah, that's right. And it is a more relational way. A lot of what I experienced through our work and then also in writing the book is there are different ways that people tend to think about networking. And again, I think you and I are very aligned philosophically, which is why we've been friends for a really long time.
Yeah.
But there can be a very transactional way that you look at networks where you're just trying to connect with the most powerful people or who have the most influence, or look at building your newsletter list or your LinkedIn profile to have numbers of connections. And we know that sometimes in the case of companies that are trying to recruit great talent, you sometimes do need to have a broad network in order to make those connections. But really what makes a difference, we're sure seeing this right now with everything around the Great Resignation and just the shortage of talent, people really do make decisions more and more based on the kind of relationships that they have. And when they feel like somebody is approaching business in a relational way, meaning human beings caring about the entire person, not just connecting, immediately looking for something in return, but being willing to connect with somebody interesting who's part of your ecosystem, and then slowly getting to know each other. I just think people are demonstrating with their feet that those are the kinds of companies they want to work with and for. And for small business owners that I work with every day, the ones that are really successful at that are the ones that are still thriving despite lots of adversity from the pandemic.
Yeah, I've run into my own challenges since sort of pivoting what I've been doing with Futureforth, and the fact that now I'm really trying to reach, technology leaders who run, small but fast growing tech companies. And I've always struggled with this in a sort of, I've stopped myself a long time ago from saying I'm terrible at sales, because I'm good at sales when I believe in what I sell. And I do believe in what I'm selling. But at the same time, it's interesting because, in this day and age now, I've always had this feeling that I don't want to come off like I'm trying to sell something. I want to come off and find out if what I have is a good fit. But even more so, I just want to be friends. I want to be friends with everyone.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think it is very smart to be deliberate about language. The more time that goes by in my life, I realize it is important to be deliberate, especially with things like saying, for example, when I'm building my business, it is so uncomfortable if I'm reaching out to somebody who I have no connection with whatsoever and immediately trying to sell them my services.
Right.
As opposed to when I think about you and your strengths, that I'm excited to connect with people who I know are generally in my space to learn more about each other. And then when we have a relationship that's beginning to form, where we can begin to just openly talk about what each other does and learn about each other with curiosity, and then begin to make those connections. That's part of what is the in the book, and part of looking at really the way methodically you can begin to build this more community focused approach to building a business or building a community. The way we naturally connect as humans, there is that whole first part where you really are just getting to know somebody. If it's a neighbor that just moves into your neighborhood, you're not immediately going to run to their front door and ask them if they want to, try to sell them something. Mm-hmm. You're going to welcome them, maybe bring over some cupcakes or, something to eat. You're going to have little conversations as each of you are getting ready to, go in and out of the house, go to work. And through time, naturally, if there is a vibe, if there's a good connection that you have, then you're probably going to feel safe asking a little bit more questions about what they do. And a lot of, I find, what we can do to ourselves where we're trying to activate business development, or a lot of what I see with clients, is that nervousness comes in when at that very first touch, you're essentially skipping a bunch of steps of just connecting with somebody, introducing yourself, getting to know them. In the case of something like LinkedIn, following their content, commenting a little bit back and forth, and then having the conversation. So I know this is 101 of what you do. And to me, that's an example of you do that naturally.
Yeah.
And so maybe the edge for other people who relate like you, it's finding those spots when you do begin to have a natural opening where you have mutual curiosity about each other's services or products, of shifting your mindset, where it's not that, oh my gosh, now I'm going to go into the selling mode, but more clearly framing exactly what that conversation is, which is generally, excitement about what it is that you're building, because we know it's amazing, and genuine curiosity to see what it is that they're doing, what are the kinds of problems or challenges that they have, and then where you start to see some places where things fit. It's like we have that experience as a consumer. It's funny, right? We don't, as a consumer, often get super stressed out. If we're going on a hiking trip and we go into a store and somebody shares a really great pair of hiking boots or tells us about it, that feels good. That feels like a problem solved.
Right.
The same thing happens in a business case where somebody's sharing what they're working on. You say, well, you know what? I actually have a webinar on that topic, or I have a team building activity we can do. It feels good when it's something that's connecting. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think maybe being that sort of point person, or being out and about and listening to the challenges that people in your network or people that are facing, so that you can be the one to offer ideas. And whether that's hiking boots and you have nothing to do with that industry, but you've got a pair that you love and you would recommend that, versus recommending your own services and what have you. And it kind of gets to the one of the core parts of your book, or one thing that really stood out to me. And again, it's the Widest Net, which is your latest book, which all your books are awesome. I recommend them all. But in the Widest Net, you talk about your jelly to your peanut butter, and kind of gets into what we're talking about. Could you want to share a little bit of details about that? And we'll make everybody hungry.
That's right. A core concept in the book, just to frame what the method is. So typically, a lot of the ways we've been taught to build a business is what I call the empire model. So you can think about yourself as being that center where you're just trying to draw everybody towards you. And that can be uncomfortable for people where they feel like they're just constantly talking about themselves and trying to draw everybody to them. In the ecosystem model, which is at the heart of the Widest Net, you center your ideal customer and really looking at what they're trying to do. So my clients, they're trying to grow a business or they're trying to scale their business. And then usually naturally around them, there is this entire ecosystem of places, associations, products that they use, other service providers that they're looking to in order to help solve their problem. So in my case, I am one of many people that my clients work with the end goal of growing or scaling their business. So PB&J partners fit in this slice of the ecosystem wheel. I have 10 different segments of that wheel in the book, but the segment of service providers, as an example, is a PB&J partner is somebody who offers a highly complementary service to the same client base. For me, my PB&J partners that I refer literally every day are my IP attorney, Sharon Turek from Legal and Creative, CPAs, graphic designers, marketing agencies, branding agencies, photographers, videographers, video editors. These are people who have a highly complementary service. And so as one place to start where you're looking to expand referrals in your business, you could ask your ideal clients, who are other service providers that you have that are your favorites that are offering complementary services? And if you have a strong relationship, you could ask them, are you comfortable just making an introduction? That first step could be where you simply just do learn more about them. I heard you were amazing from our shared client. Tell me a little bit more about what you do. And that's the way you begin to build these relationships.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And I love that too, because then you start broadening your own relations really with professional relations, because then you can start to promote them to your own people as well. And I guess that sort of fits into some of the tiny marketing actions that you talk about throughout the book, the TMAs. Do you want to share some details about that?
Absolutely. So when you understand where are those places in person or online where you want to be connecting, which I call watering holes. So that could be everything from a favorite association that maybe has many chapters across the country, right? That you can begin to connect with as ecosystem partners, or maybe there are key peanut butter and jelly partners, other service providers that you want to connect with, or a podcast that is a favorite for your ideal customers. Tiny marketing actions are really breaking down marketing activities into really, really small, almost insultingly small steps. So that one of the stories I tell in the book is my client, Carly Cunningham, who is an amazing Canadian like you by origin, brand consultant in Vancouver. And when we first started working together, and she actually was one of the main inspirations for breaking down tiny marketing actions. She was very, smiling and willing to do the work in front of me. But she told me afterwards, she was kind of grumbling, like, are you kidding me? Taking these little tiny actions of just sending a couple emails or reaching out or commenting on somebody's post, that just sounds like I'm never going to get where I need to go. And in fact, we really found the opposite to be true, which is really backed by research and great books like Tiny Actions by B.J. Fogg or Atomic Habits by James Clear, that consistent, very small habits that you work into the fabric of what you do day to day are actually going to drive much more consistent connections and results than usually what is more like a huge tidal wave of activity followed by exhaustion and a couple months of never wanting to market again, followed by panic because you have no clients, and then you hit the phones and email. And so tiny marketing actions is a way just to really smooth that out to have a really consistent, connection. And I'll say for those folks listening who may work inside a company, who might have network building reasons that could be about connecting to professional networks outside to support your company, or building relationships from a recruiting perspective in order to get to know talent and people that are in different places, the same principles apply.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I met Carly at your space.
That's right. I forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a great photo of the three of us right at your front of your space there. So yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, she's great. She's awesome. And also, yeah, a fellow Canadian. So, naturally, not biased at all. But it's interesting. What about for folks who maybe are growing something new, and they're anxious to land that new client or that first client, and they're doing these TMAs, as you mentioned, these tiny marketing actions, but they're not coming to fruition quickly enough. When they, you mentioned kind of what happens when they start to lose their patience. Like, what do they do?
Yeah, there's a nuance to it, because when you, at first, when you're trying to activate things, and you may definitely have an immediate need for business, there's a priority in the types of activities you do that, strategically, maybe historically, have led to the best results. So for example, to me, always the best place that I want to go, if I'm ever in a spot where I'm like, oh, I need to really have more connections or more prospects, would be to go to past favorite clients or partners, people I know. I know a lot of business coaches that I'm very collaborative with. Sometimes they get really busy and they have overflow and ways that I can help. But or favorite people that I have worked for in the past, although it's been 25 years for me. I've been on my own, so it's been a while.
Right.
But I'm actually still connected on LinkedIn with folks that I used to work with at Barclays Global Investors, which was my last real job. And so you can be strategic about the kinds of activities you have that are the most likely to, lead to shorter term results. But overwhelmingly, it's like any kind of habit that we want to change. If we want to have better sleep, if we want to drink more water or start to move more, be more active, or learn a language or learn a new sport, it actually, if you just try to go all in and learn everything at once, is generally where it doesn't work. It's part of like the laws of physics and nature. And so sometimes in my coaching capacity, if I have somebody who is either early on in business, or maybe they have a side hustle where they're working full time, they have a side hustle, or they need to make something happen, instead of, for example, if they need to reach out and get a whole bunch of new clients to sign up for some kind of a group offering, one-to-many thing, and it's not happening fast enough, that's where I might say strategically, maybe you need to grab a retainer kind of project. Is there something you can do maybe on the consulting side to stabilize what income you have coming in, so that you can build up slowly, test and try and see what are these kinds of tiny marketing actions that'll make sense over time. I'm not saying that you don't have sometimes specific product launches, or I just launched a book. So you can bet there were a lot of activities that I got rolling in relationship to that. But that's really just, if you look through the course of a year, maybe it's 2, 3, 4 times that you have those waves of activity, and the rest of it is this slow and steady tiny marketing action. So part of it is also setting your expectations differently. I was just doing a workshop yesterday for the Apple Developer Academy that was really cool. There were app developers from all across the world. And I was talking about building a network, and was saying that sometimes you can identify really cool partners to connect with, or influencers, people you think could be great to grow your business. And it's wonderful if somebody responds and you end up having a conversation or moving it forward. But usually, more often than not, you might get silence or nothing at all. And part of the emotional, psychological practice of this is looking more at, am I taking consistent actions, and tracking what it is that you're doing. So you might end up having some stats where you say, it's going to take me 20 outreaches in order to finally have a really productive conversation. And that could be really helpful, because then you're just going to be doing more seeding, maybe using a little bit more of an organized way that you approach doing this, where you can plant more seeds. I'm not saying just spam everybody everywhere, but there are organized ways that you can plan your activities so that you won't have the expectation. If you say, oh, I've reached out to 5 people and nobody responded. Once you begin to track some data, you say, no, my number is 20. I need to keep going to 20, and sooner or later, something's going to happen. Those are the things our internet marketing friends know who study conversion really closely. They're looking at the percentages. Sometimes you have, 1, 2, 3% of people who convert, but those are the kinds of patterns we need to start to notice for our own businesses.
It's pretty fascinating too, being so deliberate and following this process and tracking it too, because yeah, to your point, I mean, it might take 20 touch points before something happens. And I recently, or not recently, but I guess not too long ago, started taking some advice from someone who was telling me, if there's silence, keep asking until you get a no. Or a maybe, or a call or whatever. But this idea, and again, getting back to your point about not spamming, but at the same time, kind of scratching the surface enough to like finally break through. That sounds really like, I'm visioning like a scab and blood, and that's not the way I'm talking. It's like the worst scenario, worst example of what I'm talking about. But like just touch points basically, and seeing like how long it does take, and whether somebody comes back and says no, I'm not interested. Okay, cool. I don't know. Go ahead.
Search engine optimization can be confusing, but your business can benefit from it regardless of what you do. SEMrush, an all-in-one digital marketing suite, can cover key SEO activities, including tracking your competitors' keyword strategies, improving search rankings, and much more. Why choose multiple solutions when you can use just one? Start your free trial today and get on top. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/SEMrushMPN.
Yes, absolutely. I was just coaching with a client today, and we were talking about a very similar thing where when you get to know a respectful way that you might have a set number of follow-ups. So for some people, they might notice that, and we're talking about if this is somebody who is completely unknown, more of a cold outreach, or occasionally maybe somebody that was a past contact, but you hadn't heard from. For some people, it's helpful to have a bit of a rhythm where they might do their initial outreach, and then they would just set the amount of time and follow up. So maybe a week, 5-7 days, then do a second one where maybe it's a little bit shorter of, I know things are busy, forwarding the message from before and saying, hey, if you have a minute, could you just let me know if this is of interest, something like that. And then maybe 10 days later, just to do a final, I just wanted to make sure before I just close this door that, this wasn't something you were interested in. And if you just hear nothing in silence, then it's generally the case where somebody just might be ignoring you. I notice it for myself. I really try to be thoughtful to not get mad if people are pitching me in my inbox, because it's part of what I'm saying to my clients. Take chances, reach out, make an introduction, not a canned, very generic thing sometimes, which is like, I always laugh when somebody says, I sell protein supplements. And so I reached out to you as an expert, in the field. And I'm thinking, I have nothing to do with protein supplements, so delete. But if somebody has taken the time to actually reference something personally, and maybe I might thoughtfully ignore it for the first moment, much like you walk into a, cocktail party and you might say, I don't think I really want to have that conversation. Somebody might just avoid you by not responding. Yeah. But as a second time, if I get those follow-ups, now I have a pretty standard response where I say, I really appreciate you reaching out. This is not a fit for me right now, but I appreciate it. Have a great day. And very often, I know the person on the other side, often who are business development folks, appreciate it so much because they're not just getting some silence. And so I find it's just interesting sometimes in business that we know we want to grow our business and we're trying to be relational and connect. But sometimes I find we can ourselves get cynical of just like, I can't believe these people who are sending these messages. And then it's like, wait a minute. we and our clients are also doing our best to connect and begin to start a conversation. So just having a little bit of patience with that. And then like the part of it, I'm going to keep going back to the psychology part, because that's actually a huge part of what can keep you motivated and moving forward is if you do set a structure that might be related to maybe a timing that you have within your CRM, where you do your initial outreach, you pay attention to when you first reached out, and then at that time you send it. you put another reminder, 5 days later, just to check and see if they haven't responded, to send a follow-up. That can remove a lot of the angst of continually refreshing your inbox. If you don't have it, then all of a sudden you're adding all of these decision points for yourself. Should I send a message? Should I not? Is it too soon? Is it pushy?
Yeah.
Right? And so strategically, if you know for yourself what is a rhythm that feels good, or what is a follow-up format, it actually ends up creating a container for your emotions. So you can send it, you can check off, Carly, I say in the book, she created gold stars for herself every time she did her TMAs. You can give yourself a gold star for taking the action, and then you let it go and you move on to other kinds of seeds that you're planting in other TMAs. And then on the day when you look at your calendar for your follow-ups, it becomes more of something that you can just execute. And that saves people a lot of angst, because what happens if you start to get stressed out and you add these extra decisions, should I email, should I not, then you end up taking much less action.
That's really, it's great advice, and so many things to think about. I almost had while you were explaining that, I had the vision of, do you remember the movie Swingers?
I don't know if I've ever seen it. Maybe. Okay. It sounds familiar.
It was like it was a great movie, but it's kind of a comedy about dating. And there's, it's like a group of dudes who are like, totally dating and all this stuff, or trying to, and the guy's like trying to decide when to text. Like after right. meeting the woman, he's like trying to decide when he should text her, and they have this whole debate. No, like right away when you get home, or no, 24 hours later. No, make her think that you're busy. 48, and it's all this going back and forth. And of course, he like sends her like all these texts, like a whole barrage of like 20 texts, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry for sending so many texts. Oh, I hope we could still talk, And she's like, delete.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
Thank God you and I are both very happily married, which I'm so thankful for. But it's so similar in what I hear single friends talk about with dating, of the kind of feeling that you can also have when you're reaching out, because it's all about building connection and noticing if there's any kind of interest, and not being pushy, but at the same time showing interest. It's funny there's often a very, very clear correlation between the two.
Well, and as you're talking about,
some important differences.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually, Heather and I joked, about this too, like looking at modern dating, and we're just like, oh, thank God, like we couldn't leave each other now, because we'd be totally lost. Do I swipe right or up or left? Like, what am I doing here? I don't even know what to do. In fact, I'll tell you a very funny side to that. It's one of these embarrassing stories. So there is an app called Bumble for women. It's like a dating app. And basically the men pop up and the women swipe, and they decide, so it's mainly for women to use. And so it's a great concept. But when it first came out, and I'm completely unrelated, of course, but when it first came out, I understood it. And my book is about networking, so that was a topic that I was interested in. I thought it was also about there's a professional networking sort of aspect to it. And being a nerd and an early adopter to a lot of things, I installed the app. Now, this is a number of years ago, of course. And as soon as I installed, soon after, I got my friend's ex-wife reached out to me and said, "Dave, I didn't know you and Heather broke up." And I was like, no. No. And straight away, I apologized. I deleted it. And then straight away when Heather came home, I was like, I've got to tell you what happened.
You were like, it's air quote, research, air quote. Right. I was like, yes, sure it is, Dave.
Right, exactly. So getting back to the conversation, you're talking about or having a sort of a set of touch points. You mentioned a CRM. Is there a CRM that you use or that you recommend people try, or just to help keep track of this stuff?
This is the question. I don't have a singular one, because as I have learned, what the first step is, we think about it as a flow chart of the if then arrows going everywhere.
Sure.
As much as possible, if I'm working with a business owner on this, you want to look at what are you already using. And so just to not always be adding something brand new. If there's somebody that's already using some type of a, CRM or project management software or something in order to run their business, or if they're a spreadsheet person in general, to not have a whole added change management to your life for adding new technology. I would say just leverage what it is that you have and maybe add to it. I've seen people that create Notion boards for those folks who like Notion, that's more just a place in which you can capture information and move people through stages. Carly talks about using HubSpot. So I know that she's used HubSpot in her implementation because that's tied to the deeper steps that she does with her clients, also including contracts and all that stuff as she's moving people through the process of working with her. And there's Contactly, and there's probably 100 of them these days that do it. So in general, I was just teaching a class today actually about that and looking at choosing tools. And as a design principle, I would say, which is very lean startup approach, just start with your minimum viable need, which is generally for most people a basic spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And at first start with that. And then if you start to notice that you're getting lots of volume and it becomes complicated and you need to add things, then that's where you might look at what is that general environment of apps in which you live in. Sometimes there's like complementary apps that you might work with, and then you could look at adding something. But at first, try to keep it simple and straightforward.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. Yeah, you don't want to. I've written a blog post a long time ago that I called something to the effect of like procrastination through education, where we spend so much time, finding new software and poking around or just listening to endless podcasts and reading endless books and watching endless TED Talks or whatever, and not actually doing anything with the information you're learning. And so instead to kind of slow down a little bit and to realize when you're doing it too, whether, because I'm a nerd, I like tinkering with new software and things. But then to your point, suddenly and I've done this before where I've configured an entire, software platform and then realized, I don't really actually even need this, or it's not going to work for me. And next thing I know, it's days that I could have actually been doing better things.
It's so true. Chris Lee, who was a dear friend, he moved with his family to Tasmania, where his wife is from, but he works in the technology back end of, my business, has advised me for a long time. And I would come with the app of the week of like, I've got it. This is the new one. And he would just glare at me and just say, just use what you have. There's no magic tool. Of course, we know some might have a few fun features, but in general, implement and use what you have and start simple.
Yeah. Good advice. So as far as, I read that you recommend, doing interviews with your past partners and clients. What should you be asking during those conversations? I know we've talked a little bit about that, but.
Yeah. So the one of the ways to think about it, if you conceptually, part of what I'm advocating in the book and the approach to building your network is where slowly over time, you begin to really understand and see this ecosystem of amazing people who are surrounding your ideal client. So they're people who they're working with, people who they're connected to, and, connecting with great podcasts that they listen to. The metaphor I used the other month that came to me is like the Justice League. So if you imagine that you had 30 minutes to save the earth and you needed to call the Justice League of other complementary experts in your ecosystem, if you wanted to solve the problem that your business is in the problem of solving as quickly as possible, then who would you call? Just the best of the best, people with unique superhero powers.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the vision. That's what we're trying to find, because for our ideal clients and for our community members, we want to be that person where they say, oh my gosh, I was struggling with this issue and you recommended the best person, or I came to your event. That was amazing. Where did you find that person? They were totally incredible. This product, I would totally use it. So this is the way that through time, that becomes part of your role. It really becomes a new lens of the way that you look at things. In the process of discovering it, because there's always far more opportunities and new markets than we ever visualize, we can only see what we know. So we start there with places that we know, but when we begin to ask ideal clients and past colleagues, places where they hang out, where they get information. Like I'm asking people about their favorite podcast, and just to be specific, around the area in which you do business. So, for example, I would be asking my clients who are looking to build or scale a business, what are your favorite podcasts around the topic of growing a business? Like,
Right.
I love This American Life, great podcast, but it's not necessarily related to business. So ask people something like that, because on a singular podcast, if you look at somebody who has high profile, whether it's Guy Kawasaki's or Tim Ferriss's or Brene Brown, automatically what really great podcasts, or you, Dave, right now, that for right away, what great podcast hosts are doing is they are inviting ecosystem partners to their audience who are offering interesting, highly complementary, unique twists and information to help their listeners do what they're trying to do. And so just in identifying one or two podcasts that are favorites, all of a sudden you can begin to uncover, if they are good and discerning about who they have as guests, who can be maybe some people you hadn't heard about before. And it's like the nesting Russian doll metaphor, where once you even begin to look at, oh, wow, here's one interesting person who I didn't really know much about. And so you go and you see their LinkedIn profile, or you might go and look at conferences where they've spoken. All of a sudden, you can often find all of these other places in the ecosystem where this interesting person is going and moving. And so at first, key questions could be podcasts for folks who like that. Also asking about who are other service providers that you love and you work with. That's a really good, rich one. The two others I find at the top of the list are associations, because associations is very one-to-many, a very scalable thing. So let's say you have an audience segment for you, technology executives. There are probably a whole number of different associations, some of which have local chapters and then national or global chapters, that once maybe you dial in and you have a really valuable topic, you could begin to really move and work within that association and bring your message to a whole bunch of people. So within the slice of technology executives, you could have technology executives for SaaS companies. You could have female technology executives, LGBTQ plus, like all these different variations that can begin to give some dimension to how you can start to do your outreach.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome advice. I'm curious, who's a person in your life whose kindness helped to lead to your success?
I always think of Guy Kawasaki, who I actually feature in the book, way back in 2006, when I was a baby blogger. I had a very small readership, my dad, my sister, my best friend, and a few random people on Google. And I wrote a post called An Open Letter to CEOs Across the Corporate World. And on a whim, I had never met him before, I reached out through email and did that tiny marketing action. I didn't call it that then, but I reached out just to share it. I said, I've been following your work and I thought you might like this. And he responded right away and said, I love it. Can you make it a top 10? Because that's his favorite format.
Yeah.
So I finished it. I sent it back to him. He published it on his blog. And the next day it just went massively viral. It's actually where I first conceptualized the idea of a watering hole, because I realized his blog at that time in 2006 was the perfect gathering spot for people who shared common values, who were interested in, Apple and Macintosh. I've always been an, Apple person, interested in entrepreneurship, social change. And so when I was able to connect in that one place with his community, all of a sudden my audience grew exponentially. And part of what I always appreciate is, at that point, there was nothing I could formally give him, right? Like, it wasn't, if he was looking purely at my audience size and why he should pay attention, why he should be responding to that cold email that I sent. In later years, we've since become good friends and I've known him for a really long time, but he was curious and he was interested, and he's always looking as a curator for his audience. He found something in what I wrote that he really connected to. And so I just appreciate that. And I will say, as a female founder, through the years as I've gotten to know him, he doesn't really publicize it, but he's done so many similar things for so many female founders behind the scenes. And it's actually really, really rare in that space.
No, that's great. And Guy is such a wonderful person. I've had some interesting run-ins with him over the years, and he was actually on one of my earlier podcasts as well. Somebody I need to speak to on this one. Actually, I need to reach back out to him. It's been forever. Guy actually, funny thing was, I was at, there was a tech conference in Seattle back in the day called Gnomedex. And Guy was speaking there. It was a, group of 2 or 3, maybe 300 sort of early adopter tech nerds like myself. And he was speaking and he was like, everybody's on their computers, and somebody yelled out, "Oh, we're on Twitter." This is like 06, 07. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, Twitter." And people were like, "Come on, or you're not on Twitter?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Do you really think I should?" And so after his presentation, a small group of us were talking to him. And he's like, "You really think I should do it?" And we're like, "Yeah, you should." And so he set up his Twitter account that day. And what's funny is because we talked about it since then. And he's like, "Really?" And I looked back and yeah, sure enough, it was the day of that conference that he said that he first tweeted. And then years later, during South by Southwest, myself and Julian Smith were standing at an event talking to him. And we're just kind of hanging out at one of the South by Southwest kind of party things or whatever. And Julian kind of looked down at his phone and looked up in shock at Guy, who had his hands in his pockets, and said, "You just tweeted." He turned his phone around and said, "How did you just tweet?" And Guy's like, "I don't do that, my friend. I've got someone to help me with that." And we were like, "Wait, what?" And it was like crimes against social media. And we were just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he's got someone doing that." And in this day and age, you're like, "Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Pretty ahead of the times there, Guy." So yeah,
I know. Well, it's so we could talk all day with Guy stories, but it's so funny. There at South by Southwest, this is another example of a watering hole where you can see at certain places. This is highlighting an example of an event, which can't wait till everything comes back. We can hang out at South by again, but I was having dinner with him. So this was after the book came out, and we were actually doing a panel at South by with a blog to book, people who had done blog to book like I did.
Yeah.
And we were eating dinner in the lobby at the Hilton, which everybody who's been to South by will know exactly where that is. And so I'm sitting there eating dinner with him. And who walks by but Ann Handley, who I love dearly,
yes,
from Marketing Profs. She stops by. Zay Frank, who I was always been a nerd. I love him. I'm such a super fan. He just stopped by to say hi. And then I was walking away and leaving, and Tim Ferriss was like sitting on the ground, like working on his laptop. So I like plopped down and talked to him. And I just thought, how in the world, if you imagine the amount of gatekeeping that it would take to sometimes break through reaching these people who are amazing and super connected, but also probably have some walls up. It's an example of being in a strategic place where you can naturally be connecting with people that are hanging out. And again, it happened to be through somebody, of course, where they were interested in stopping by and saying hi to him. But at its essence, when you get to the heart of what the work is about, it's not connecting transactionally because you're saying this is a super fancy person who has a lot of fans and followers. This is somebody whose work I respect so much, and I'm creating and contributing things that are highly complementary. And that the more you can start to have this Justice League feeling of we really are on a shared mission in order to solve important problems, in order to make things easier for business owners, right? To be creating things that are going to make the world a more safe, fair, equitable, creative place. That's where it can take a lot of the ick out of it. Because I know for myself, as soon as I catch myself hanging out, or it may be going towards somebody just because I know that they have some stature or they have a large audience, but I don't feel a true connection, all of a sudden I feel like that awkward junior high student, like going to a dance, like all of my natural just, ease and flow of moving through the world. All of a sudden it just comes to a halt because I know I'm just doing something transactionally.
Right.
And not because I'm interested. And for me, like my interest can be somebody who has zero audience. And then sometimes there is somebody whose work I admire who has a big audience, but I'm interested in learning from them because they're truly interesting and they're contributing something. So conceptually, that's always a message that I want to include with this, because it's great if you ever have that opportunity. It really only happened to me once to go extremely viral with a post, but it is wonderful when it happens. But I think in the long term, as I look at what that relationship has meant to me and just what I've learned, it was because there was such synergy, and that's what we're always looking for.
Yeah, and I think finding your tribe that way is so important, and I think that's some of the work you do with Call It Main Street Learning Lab as well, because it's a place where people can come together for events and for training and things, and it's when you can be that point person, whether you're running an event or a space like you do, where you can be that ringleader. I think there's so much to be said for that, because I mean, yeah, I love Hugh Forrest, who runs South by Southwest Interactive, and it's kind of his baby, and because of that, because of all the wonderful relationships, or Chris Perillo from Gnome Decks when I met Guy, and these other folks who ran conferences back in the day, or who still do, who, yeah, I will always be grateful for. So yeah, really, really interesting. Okay. I'm going to move to the lightning round. I want to be respectful of your time here. So complete this sentence. Nice guys and gals finish.
First is the first thing that came out to me. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I like
Finish
it.
at the right time.
Ooh, that too. Yeah, that's good. Very punctual. Good timing. What's a nice book that you recommend to the nice makers?
If you want to write a book about art, independence, and spirit is the subtitle. And it's because I'm on this Guy Kawasaki memory, but that's one of his favorite books that he recommended. It is astounding for those of you who love to write. It was written in like 1934. It's an amazing, amazing book by Brenda Ueland, Ueland. Great book.
Nice. Cool. Okay. I'll include a link to that in the notes. How is Pam nice to herself? I
think the biggest thing that I appreciate about the relationship I have with myself, I was just watching probably a TikTok video yesterday, where I get all of my education. Yeah. Saying we need to be mothering ourselves. We need to be, mothering ourselves in the way that we wish we were mothered. My mom did a great job, so nothing wrong with the way I was mothered. But I actually actively practice having appreciation and joy for what I do. Like anybody else, I can have doubt about what I did, but I have never in 25 years of business lost the joy and the feeling of accomplishment in creating something, I might deliver a talk like I did yesterday, and I let myself have that feeling like, I so appreciate that you showed up, that you walked through the fear, and you made a contribution. So it feels like on a daily basis, I let myself have a lot of those moments. And so in general, I'm a pretty happy person.
Are you able to always create, or to give yourself permission to create? I mean, like for me, when I'm hitting sort of lulls, as a professional speaker, as you, yourself included in that, during the pandemic, obviously that's not been the best time to be a professional speaker. And when you're not earning the money that you should be earning for your business, and you have a family, do you ever struggle with giving yourself the permission to create?
Yeah, it's a great question. Twofold. So on one hand, I've really learned, and part of this was due to my friend Michael Bungay Stanier, who wrote The Coaching Habit, and it's a great recent book. I'm forgetting the title now, Start Now or something like that. Yeah. Sorry, Michael. But anyway, he said, I was frustrated when I was writing Body of Work, my last book, about how I just felt like I was all over the place, and I would write and then I'd get distracted and go on Facebook and research. And I was judging myself very harshly, comparing myself to other writers who I imagine just sat down in an organized fashion and got stuff done. And Michael said, maybe that's just what your creative process is. And it was the simplest thing, but it was so profound for me, where I gave myself permission to understand that for me, as I look at the arc of what I've created, I always laugh really, usually right in front of somebody when they say, gosh, I can't believe how prolific you are. You get so much stuff done. I laugh because if I were actually working all the time, like they imagine that I am, I probably would be producing 5 times as much, 5 times as many books and articles. So there is an ebb and flow in the kind of creative activity. And given what's happening emotionally, like you said, when you're going through some kind of a pivot in business or when business is down, which has definitely happened in the 25 years, then it's really important to just get very precise about what is needed. And then it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation. I really go back and I depend on the rhythm of connections, organizing things, doing consistent outreach, being very clear with myself to be, celebrating the fact that I took action and to let myself, slowly be building things back up as opposed to going in a full-on panic mode, because that's the thing. In the 2007, when we had the whole crash here, my husband at that time had a heavy equipment construction business, and we were hit extremely hard in his business. And so I know what it's like on his side of just the free fall. It is absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And I'm thankful that he's a traditional medicine person. He's a traditional Navajo healer, is now what he's doing full time. But he is such a calm person. And part of what he taught me is even in those times where it's so scary, you want to come back to that self-love, to presence. I would go sit outside and just feel the sun and take a nice deep breath, and then come back to these small steps. What can I do today in order to make a connection, to, have a conversation, to send one email? And every time I like, should I really send that email? I've just sent 3 about my program. Every time there might be one more person who signs up. So maybe it's an extra, whatever, $300-$500 or something that comes. Yeah. But it's always that example of just take the step. So.
Yeah. I love it. And that's a great point to end on, is just to take that step. I think it's great advice. Pam, where can folks find you and find your book and all that good stuff? I know where to find you, but where can they find you?
Everything is centralized at PamelaSlim.com. And if you're specifically interested in the book, which I would love, it is PamelaSlim.com/The Widest Net. And so there you can learn more about it. I feature all the people I feature in the book. I have links to them and their work. They're amazing people who are featured in the book. And then also, you can, of course, find it wherever books are sold.
And for our author friends listening, or aspiring authors, I recommend, beyond going there to get the book, also go and look at that page, because I was on there the other day and I love the fact that you included headshots and links to the folks that you mentioned in the book. And you've got some great resources there as well. So really well done.
I appreciate that. I'll give myself a shout out, if that's okay, right? In the spirit of practicing. We just won last week the best sales and marketing book of 2021 from Porchlight Books. So that was a really unexpected and wonderful thing. So
congrats.
Thank you, Porchlight. Yeah.
Well deserved. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Nice Podcast. Please leave a review if you enjoyed this episode at friend.nicepodcast.co. And you can find show notes, links to other episodes, and lots of other goodies over at nicepodcast.co. Music by Alistair Crystal at alistaircrystal.ca. We'll see you next time, and be nice.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business too? Caroline Kay hosts a great podcast called Snippets of Genius. Caroline, tell us what these folks will get out of listening.
Snippets of Genius is a lighthearted business podcast with some brilliant insights into how you can attract and cultivate success. In each episode, I have an inspiring conversation with genius guests from the worlds of business development, marketing, design, and wellness. Each of them share their ballsy, daring moves to burst business opportunities wide open. Every episode is designed to give you as much value as possible so you can decide, define, and develop anything you want in your career or business.
Hard to turn that down. Where can people subscribe?
They can come on over to my website, which is www.carolinek.co/podcast, or find the show at marketingpodcast.net, or search for Snippets of Genius wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.